By the end of this video, you probably won't remember exactly what we said at the beginning.
But you are likely to remember the last thing we say.
That's why conclusions are so important. I'm Maddie.
And I'm James, and in this edition of our Speak to Inspire series, we'll be talking about what makes a good conclusion.
Conclusions are a very important part of your speech. They're the final thing the audience hears, so you want to make sure they're both interesting and memorable. Today, we'll look at 3 different types of conclusions you can use.
A call to action directly asks the audience to do something. You might use one when you're giving a speech about something the audience can directly get involved in or make a change about. And it's a particularly useful tool when you want to be persuasive in encouraging the audience to actually make a change.
Let's say you're giving a speech about the importance of recycling. A good way to conclude your speech would be by calling on the audience to improve their recycling habits. For example, saying, "It's up to me, it's up to you to make a change." This creates a clear picture of what you want the audience to achieve and makes your speech more persuasive.
Providing the audience with the moral of your speech informs them of the true story that you're trying to tell with your speech. It's a particularly engaging tool, and it's really useful for explaining complicated ideas in a simple way.
Let's say you're giving a speech about the importance of being determined and having patience. You might tell a story about the hare and the tortoise to illustrate this moral. Therefore, at the end of your speech, you could refer back to this and say that slow and steady wins the race. This is an effective way to make sure that the audience understands the message behind your speech.
Finally, you could finish your speech the way you started. You could do this when you have a recurring theme or idea in your speech, or you have something that you really want the audience to remember.
There are 3 easy ways to do this.
If you began your speech with a quote, you might want to finish your speech by referencing that quote again. For example, if you started with the quote, "I have a dream," you could finish your speech by saying, "And that's why I have a dream."
Another really easy way to do this is if you start your speech with a rhetorical question, you could come back at the end and either repeat that question or answer it. For example, if I began my speech by asking, "Whose job is it to save the Earth?" I could conclude by saying, "It's everyone's job to save the Earth."
And finally, if you began your speech by telling a story or sharing an anecdote, you could reference this again at the end of your speech, either by referring back to it again or maybe finishing the story. For example, if you were giving a speech about risk-taking and telling a story about when you went skydiving, you could finish your speech by talking about how great it felt when you landed.
And now we've reached the conclusion of this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos and leave any comments below of anything you'd like to see.
And in case you haven't picked up on it already, that was a great example of a call to action in a speech. That's all for now. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.